What if the most dangerous threat to a profound truth isn't isn't the people who openly attack it, but the people who fiercely, desperately defend it? Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, it's a paradox that really messes with how we usually view loyalty to an idea.
It really does. So for you listening, we are tearing up the map today. We are looking at a single, incredibly dense, deeply philosophical text excerpt titled Zion, False Followers and Real Truth.
And it is quite a title.
Oh, absolutely. And our mission for today's deep dive is to unpack the archetypal ideas hidden within this text. Like, what is the nature of truth? How do we lose it to structured systems? And what does a highly provocative phrase like the goddess within actually mean symbolically at the absolute bedrock level of reality?
I mean, it is a text that fundamentally reorients how you perceive your own belief systems. It takes concepts we normally treat as external, like a destination you can travel to or, dogma you can memorize, and it just drags them entirely into the internal psychological realm.
It demands that you look at the mechanics of your own mind. So let's dissect this, starting with the foundational concept here, Zion. Usually when that word comes up, there's an immediate expectation of geography.
Oh, sure. Physical coordinates.
Right. It's like typing an address into a GPS. You expect a destination, a historical city, a dot on a map that you can physically travel to, plant a flag in, and just say, I made it.
Which makes perfect sense from a human psychological perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because we crave coordinates. A physical location is conquerable.
Right.
It is measurable. You can build walls around it and decide who gets to come inside.
Yeah, who's in and who's out.
Precisely. But this text completely rejects that premise. It states explicitly that Zion is not merely a physical place or a historical city. It defines Zion as a symbol of three specific things: origin, alignment, and return.
Origin, alignment, and return. Wow. That completely flips the script.
It really does.
It moves Zion from being a place you travel to a state of being you operate from. The text describes it as the point of true connection between being and source. And I have to say, the line that absolutely stopped me in my tracks was this. It says, Zion is a state where truth is not taught, but directly known.
Directly known. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. We rely almost entirely on mediators to understand the world,
Oh, 100%.
We look to teachers, institutions, algorithms, experts to hand down the truth to us. The text is arguing that at the ultimate point of origin, in this state of Zion, mediation vanishes entirely.
You aren't receiving a translation of the truth from a podium.
No, you are experiencing it directly.
It's like the difference between reading a highly detailed menu and actually tasting the food.
Yeah.
The text emphasizes that in Zion, truth isn't something someone teaches you, it's just a direct knowing.
Right. You are eating the meal.
So if we have this capacity for direct knowing, this perfect, unmediated alignment, why on earth do we abandon it? Why are we all walking around relying on secondhand translations and mediators?
It's a great question. And it naturally brings us to the text's explanation of how truth decays over time.
Decays. That's an interesting word for it.
Yeah, the decay happens because direct knowing is inherently unstable and deeply, deeply personal. Human beings crave permanence. We have this deep psychological need to share our experiences with others.
We want to connect.
Exactly. If you experience a profound truth, your immediate instinct is to communicate it. But to share it, you have to translate that raw living experience into language.
You have to put words to it.
Right. You have to create rules, rituals, and structures to communicate it to someone else.
You try to bottle the lightning so you can, hand it to your neighbor?
That is a perfect way to phrase it.
Yeah.
And the text points out the tragedy in that very impulse. It explains that over time, these structured systems manage to preserve fragments of the truth, sure, but they inevitably lose the living essence.
Because the structure chokes it out.
Exactly. The moment you put walls around an experience to protect it and pass it down, you trap it. The structure meant to preserve the truth ends up suffocating it.
Man, that makes me think of an analogy. It's like someone who inherits a magnificent, totally empty cage where a dragon used to live.
I love that. A dragon cage.
Right. The original builders built the cage because they actually saw the dragon. They experienced it directly. But generations later, the dragon is long gone, and now you have people who spend their entire lives polishing the bars of the cage, fiercely defending the cage from outsiders, and, holding weekly seminars on proper cage maintenance.
All while having completely forgotten what the dragon actually looked like.
Exactly. They just worship the iron.
That perfectly captures the text's concept of the false follower. the people polishing the cage. They inherit the form without the essence.
And I think it's really critical to point out here that when the text says false follower, it isn't describing a cartoon villain.
No, not at all.
It's not a conscious deceiver twirling a mustache and trying to lead people astray. So a false follower isn't malicious. They're more like, well, someone fiercely defending a map without ever having visited the territory the map describes. Are they simply confusing the symbol for the reality?
That is exactly what they're doing. False followers are not inherently malicious. They are actually driven by a very natural human desire for belonging and certainty. Because they lack that internal direct knowing, because they've never seen the dragon, their orientation becomes entirely external.
They have to look outside themselves.
Right. They have to seek validation from the outside.
So how does that external orientation manifest, practically speaking? Like, what does a false follower actually do?
According to the text, it manifests through repetition and attachment. False followers repeat the teachings they inherited. They defend the structures, and most importantly, they attach their core identity to the system itself.
So their ego gets wrapped up in it.
Oh, completely. They seek validation through belonging to the group or appealing to the authority of the institution. They uphold the symbols while being completely disconnected from what those symbols originally pointed toward.
It's a tragic irony, really. You have millions of people desperately trying to connect with something real, something profound. But because human nature pushes us toward the safety of the group and, the certainty of the structure, that very desire for belonging ironically separates us from the source we are trying to reach.
It does.
We end up fiercely defending a map without ever actually walking the territory.
And that forces a very uncomfortable self-evaluation for anyone reading this.
Yeah.
It makes you ask yourself, when I defend my beliefs, am I holding on to a living essence, or am I just clinging to a structure because it's safe, it's what I know, and it provides me with the community?
Wow. Yeah. But hold on, I have to challenge this a bit based on what the text says next.
Sure, go for it.
It contrasts the false follower with its definition of real truth. And it says that real truth exists prior to structure. And crucially, it says that real truth does not require defense because it is self-evident when seen clearly.
Yes, that is the core of its argument.
Okay, here is my friction with that.
Okay.
The text states that real truth doesn't require defense. But human nature makes us want to fiercely defend our beliefs. Does the very act of desperately defending a truth mean you've already slipped into being a false follower defending a structure?
Well, let's unpack that.
Because if real truth requires absolutely zero defense and is just quietly self-evident, doesn't that make it incredibly fragile? I mean, in the real world, if you don't fiercely defend your values against bad actors, those values get steamrolled.
Right. Human history is full of that.
Exactly. So how does this text reconcile the quiet consistency of real truth with the messy reality of actually surviving in a society that constantly challenges everything?
The text would counter that by asking what exactly you believe is being steamrolled. Is it the truth itself, or is it merely your structured version of it?
Oh, okay, that's a sharp distinction.
Think of real truth as the text defines it, like gravity. Gravity exists prior to any physicist writing an equation for it. It does not depend on institutions, approval, or consensus to exist.
Right.
If a group of people suddenly decide gravity isn't real, gravity doesn't need a defense team. It doesn't need a PR campaign. It remains perfectly consistent. It is self-evident.
So the truth itself isn't fragile. The structure is fragile.
Yes. The institutions we build around the truth are highly fragile and require constant defense. The ideologies require defense. But the text argues that the moment you feel a visceral, desperate need to defend a truth, to secure consensus, to win the argument, to get external approval, you are no longer operating in the realm of real truth.
You are defending the structure of your belief.
Exactly. Or your ego's attachment to that structure. You are defending the cage.
That is a staggering paradigm shift. Just the exhausting posture of constantly defending your worldview versus the quiet consistency of something that just is. It completely reframes how we interact with conflict.
It really does.
If real truth is recognized internally, the noise of external consensus, like all the arguing, the proving, the validating it, just fades away. It doesn't matter if no one else agrees, because the truth doesn't need their agreement to exist.
It fundamentally removes the anxiety of validation.
Yeah.
But to truly grasp this, to understand this prior state of truth, before the systems took over and made everyone so defensive, the text forces us to look at origins.
Where does everything start before it gets structured?
Precisely.
And this brings us to what is easily the most provocative symbolic claim in the entire document. The text introduces this statement: the truth is before males, the goddess within.
which requires very careful navigation because words like goddess and before males carry immense baggage today.
Tremendous baggage. And I want to pause here and be incredibly clear with you listening. When you hear phrases like that, it is so easy to immediately view this through the lens of modern political culture war.
Right. People will project a 21st century gender debate right onto the text.
Exactly. But if you do that, you're missing the actual philosophical framework the author is building. We have to look at what this means impartially, based solely on the source material. We are not taking sides or endorsing any modern political stance here.
Absolutely. The text is explicit that this is an archetypal and ontological claim. It is not a biological ranking. It is not a modern political manifesto.
Let's break down ontological for a second so we aren't just throwing academic terms around. When the text makes an ontological claim, it means it's talking about the foundational blueprint of reality itself. It's asking, what is the fundamental nature of existence at its rock bottom level?
Precisely. And at that rock bottom level, the text suggests that the origin of life, consciousness, and creation is fundamentally generative, receptive, and self-containing.
Okay, generative and receptive.
Yes, that is what it means symbolically by the goddess. It represents the primordial creative field from which all differentiation, all form, and all structure eventually emerge.
I want to visualize that primordial creative field. It's like trying to describe the ocean before we started naming all the individual waves and currents.
Yes, that's a beautiful way to see it.
In this text, the goddess is the ocean, the generative, undivided source before things get categorized, divided, and structured into hierarchies.
That is the perfect mechanism to understand the text's symbolism.
Yep.
Historically and symbolically, ancient traditions encoded this exact generative principle. They recognized an original, undivided source of creation.
But then what happened?
Well, over time, just as we discussed with the decay of truth into systems, this principle became obscured. It was externalized. The internal, lived experience of the generative field was replaced by external, structured hierarchies.
So the shift from that internal, undivided ocean to an external, rigid hierarchy is what the text means when it contrasts the goddess archetype with the male archetype. It's
Yeah.
using those terms as philosophical symbols for different states of reality.
Yes, it is describing the ontological movement from direct embodiment to external authority, from creation to categorization.
Which totally explains the phrase before males. It isn't saying women are better than men biologically, it's making a point about the order of operations in reality.
The text calls it a symbolic ordering. It is placing origin before division. It places creation before structure. And it places internal knowing before external validation.
The ocean has to exist before the structure that attempts to map and categorize it.
Exactly.
Like we said earlier, you can't build the dragon's cage until the dragon actually exists. Origin before structure.
And this framework completely illuminates why the false follower is trapped. The false follower is obsessed with the categorization, the hierarchy, the male principle in this text's symbolic language.
Because they've lost the ocean.
Yes, they have completely lost contact with the generative source, the goddess within, which is the only place where real truth actually resides.
Wow. Okay, so we have explored the origin, this generative undivided ocean. We've explored the tragedy of the fall into structured systems where human anxiety traps us as false followers, clinging to empty cages and fighting over maps.
A lot of fighting over maps.
Yeah. And we've explored the quiet, indestructible, self-evident nature of real truth that requires zero defense. Which brings us full circle to the text's ultimate conclusion. How do we resolve this immense disconnect?
The text brings us right back to where we started, Zion.
The Zion.
But it defines Zion as the restoration of this original alignment.
So it's a return.
A profound return. The realization the text pushes for is that truth is not something you follow. It is something you return to.
Because the very act of following implies that external orientation we've been talking about, right?
Exactly. Following means you are looking outside yourself. You are looking for the leader. You're looking for the system. You are looking for the right set of rules to adhere to.
And returning.
Returning means turning inward. It means going back to that primordial creative field.
And the text makes a massive claim about what happens when you do that. It states that when that direct connection is reestablished, the entire distinction between false followers and real truth simply dissolves.
The conflict vanishes entirely.
Why does it vanish? Just because you're no longer fighting over the structure.
Because truth is no longer being mediated through form. It's no longer mediated through institutions or symbols or arguments or defenses. It is lived as reality itself.
You are finally tasting the food instead of screaming at people in the restaurant about the font used on the menu.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, the illusion of the structure falls away, and only the direct knowing remains. That is the ultimate restoration the text is pointing toward. That is Zion.
It is an absolute paradigm shift. We've taken Zion from a geographical dot on a map, a place you can conquer and defend, and revealed it, at least through the lens of this text, as an internal state of unmediated connection.
It changes everything about how you seek truth.
It really does. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, taking these philosophical concepts and crashing them right into your everyday life.
Because a philosophy is only as good as its application to reality.
Exactly. The text claims that real truth is experienced entirely internally. It is quietly self-evident. It absolutely does not require defense, it does not require consensus, and it does not need external validation to exist. So think about the world you interact with every single day. Think about how it functions.
It is a world entirely built on the opposite premise.
Literally the exact opposite. Our modern society runs almost exclusively on external validation. It runs on viral consensus. It is fueled by the dopamine hits of likes, shares, and retweets.
We are constantly looking outward to be told what is true and what is acceptable.
We spend massive amounts of our time and energy fiercely, sometimes violently, defending our ideological structures in every comment section, every town square, every political debate. We are a society absolutely obsessed with defending the cage.
Which raises the ultimate question about sustainability.
Right. Could a culture built entirely on external symbols, on the constant defense of structures, even survive the quiet presence of real truth? If people actually stopped needing external validation, if they stopped defending the map and simply started walking the territory, what happens to the systems that govern us? Do they adapt or do they collapse?
It certainly makes you wonder how much of our daily friction is just a loud, desperate argument over a menu we don't even need to be reading.
A quiet truth is a dangerous thing to a loud system. Until next time, keep walking the territory.